Good morning, welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Friday, January 21st, 2011. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. It's 4:30 p.m. in London, 12:30 in Hamilton, 10:30 in Mexico City. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX, Overseas, our AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. The next time we see you on Monday, the two teams that are going to compete in the American Super Bowl will be known. The two quarterfinal games, actually the two semifinal games, are occurring this Sunday. So we'll have the winners in the Super Bowl will be scheduled in Dallas 2 weeks from this Sunday. Part one of our interview with Tom Bolt of Lloyd's is going to run during our regularly scheduled show on Monday, the 24th. Part two will run on Tuesday, the 25th. We'll post the entire interview on our archive section at CATEX-TV.com. We'll now go to our main news. Insurance Insider is reporting that a trio of senior professional liability executives have left London market broker Miller to launch a new financial lines division at BMS. The team are led by Miller director Alastair Ritchie, who resigned this week, and they're currently on gardening leave. This is according to the Insider. There's no confirmation yet on this. The Insurance Day is reporting that a record-breaking event cancellation policy covering the forthcoming Cricket World Cup has been agreed between ESPN, the American-based broadcaster, and the state-owned General Insurance Corporation of India. The policy provides cover totaling 6 billion rupees, which by our figure comes to about 131 million US. That's more than 3 times the cover for the Commonwealth Games that were held in Delhi last year. ESPN is buying the cover in case of disruptions caused by bad weather or terrorism, and they're paying a premium of about 2 million US. The Cricket World Cup is one of the biggest sporting events of the year. It begins on February 19th and it runs until April 2nd. Most Americans who have a glancing knowledge of cricket would say from that glancing knowledge, that's about how long one cricket match takes. Big news in the Arabian Sea. South Korean commandos have rescued this ship, the Sambo Jewelry. At dawn today, South Korean special forces packed into a small boat approached the hijacked freighter. Somali pirates were on board armed with anti-tank missiles and AK-47s. A South Korean destroyer was nearby and a Lynx helicopter was nearby providing covering fire. The operation took about 5 hours. All 21 hostages had been rescued, 8 Somali pirates killed and 5 more captured. One of the hostages, the captain, was wounded, but he's still alive and is expected to recover. The South Korean president calls it a perfect operation. This man, of course, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-il, has to be somewhat impressed at the ability of his southern neighbor to launch a rescue operation many thousands of miles away to rescue the 11,500-ton chemical carrier. It is definitely a pretty impressive military feat. Well, first Tunisia, and now we have Amman, Jordan, which is the scene of thousands of Jordanians protesting in the capital against the country's economic policies. The march today began after weekly prayers with protesters demanding, bread and freedom and calling for the government to step down. Police, oddly, handed out bottles of water and juice to the demonstrators. Demonstrators were carrying signs saying, "We need a national salvation government, no to oppression, yes to change." Police said that 4,000 people took part. The protest was organized by 14 different political parties. Thousands of Jordanians took to the streets last week. The uprising in Tunisia has inspired dissidents across the Arab world, sparking protests in Jordan, Egypt, and Algeria. Next week, Egyptian protesters are planning to mark the country's National Police Day on the 25th of January with a massive demonstration against corruption, poverty, and unemployment. In fact, since the Tunisian president has fled to Saudi Arabia, 6 people in Egypt have attempted to set themselves on fire in a protest against unemployment. 1 man has died so far. Well, update on the Australian floods. We spoke yesterday about Munich Re giving a tutorial on how they are not going to pay if flood insurance is not paid for by the customer, which is actually pretty logical. The Australian government is saying that insurance companies must develop a standard flood clause. The government says the policy should be, quote, in plain English and give all homeowners access to insurance or face government intervention on the issue. This would be government intervention aimed at the Australian insurers. The Queensland Treasurer, Andrew Fraser, said the industry could face a competing government flood insurance scheme if it didn't act. He wants a standardized flood clause inserted into all policies and flood cover offered to all policy holders. It would, however, be priced according to the risk. Losses continue to mount. Insured losses from the flooding could top $6 billion U.S. Earnings estimates for a number of Bermudian reinsurers are at risk, according to some analysts. The reconstruction costs from the flooding are expected to reach about 20 billion Australian dollars, or a shade under 20 billion US. Well, Dr. Richard Ward made a speech in New York. Actually, he was being interviewed by Reuters, Thomson Reuters. He said that he now sees Switzerland as a greater threat to Lloyd's than Bermuda. He said that Lloyd's had faced competition from Bermudian reinsurers for a number of years, but in some cases these players weren't as strong as they seemed. But he said people are seeing Switzerland now as a safer haven than they ever had before. Dr. Ward noted Switzerland's favorable business climate and the success of some of the businesses that had already established a base there. Allied World, Amlin, and Catlin have moved there last year. Aspen became an admitted insurer there. Flagstone and Ace have had a Swiss base for some time. Just this month, Canopius announced the launch of a Zurich-based European reinsurance platform. And of course, the day before yesterday, the Aon annual risk map downgraded Bermuda one notch. Stock market in New York is up about 50 points. We'll go to a word from our sponsors, come back with the rest of the news. The Daily Telegraph newspaper in London is reporting this morning that the Stuxnet computer virus that sabotaged Iran's nuclear program was the result of collaboration between at least one Western power and the Israeli Secret Service. A security researcher named Thomas Parker, who specializes in tracing cyber attacks, has spent months analyzing the code behind the virus, and he's found evidence that it was created by two separate organizations. The forensic evidence supports the reported claims of intelligence sources that it was a joint two-step operation. Mr. Parker said, quote, it was most likely developed by a Western power, and they most likely then provided it to a secondary power, which completed the effort. The software was first detected last year, was almost certainly designed exclusively to make damaging surreptitious adjustments to the centrifuges used at one of the main uranium enrichment sites in Iran, at Natanz. The President of Iran, Mr. Ahmadinejad, has confirmed that Stuxnet has set back his nuclear ambitions. Separate investigations by experts have discovered that Stuxnet worked by increasing the speed of uranium centrifuges to breaking point for short periods of time. At the same time, the virus shut off safety monitoring systems, fooling operators into thinking that all was normal. According to the forensic evidence that's been built up now, most likely it's thought that the actual development of the virus itself was done by the United States or the British, and then implanted into the facility physically by Israel's Mossad agency. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is commenting on that one. A decision by Bayer to hasten the restart of pesticide production and bypass safety controls led to an accident in August of '08 at a facility in Institute, West Virginia, that ended up killing 2 workers and requiring 40,000 people near the plant to evacuate. This is the conclusion of the Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board, an American entity, released earlier this week. Reports cited gross inadequacies in Bayer's accident emergency response operations. Workers at the plant, according to the report, were under pressure to resume production of pesticides after a lengthy maintenance shutdown, and as a result they failed to evaluate new computer programs or inspect safety equipment. Most critical, according to the report, was the intentional overriding of an interlock system that designed to prevent a runaway reaction inside a treater pressure vessel. Late at night, the vessel overpressurized, exploded into a fireball, sending pieces flying, but just barely missed an above-ground tank storing 13,000 pounds of methyl isocyanate. Methyl isocyanate is the chemical that caused the deaths of thousands of people in Bhopal in 1984. The Bayer has announced that they have decided to gradually end all production at the plant by the end of next year. Here's sort of a familiar picture. We remember this from the floods in North Dakota, the Red River of North Dakota, which is the border between North Dakota and Minnesota, one of the few rivers in North America that runs north, has a 20% chance of exceeding its record crest in the spring of '09. That's coming up this spring. North Dakota says that the Weather Service, that the Red River has been running above the high marks of 97 and 2009 when it flooded out Grand Forks. According to forecasters, the outlook for this spring is likely going to be cool, stormy, and wet. Add that to the existing snowpack, and people there are beginning to get prepared. Spring is, after all, although the weather in North America would have you disbelieve this, right around the corner. Qantas, the Australian national carrier, is aiming to settle with Rolls-Royce. They're working toward a commercial settlement with the engine manufacturer over the A380's mid-air engine explosion late last year. CEO of Qantas, Alan Joyce, said that the prime objective is to reach a settlement with Rolls-Royce out of court, but they have in fact already initiated a lawsuit in case a settlement's not possible. Joyce said, "We're talking to Rolls. Our primary objective is to resolve this commercially. The dialogue will take as long as it takes." Qantas shares have fallen about 13% since the November incident. Analysts estimate the impact of the A380 incident, which grounded the 6 A380s of Qantas, could reach as high as $80 million US. Well, you have to leave this to the Russians. We've sort of been following this. It was a little preposterous at first, but as it goes on, it even becomes more preposterous. Check these people out. These are astronauts. That Mars 500, that's symbolic of the length of time that a trip to Mars is going to take, round trip plus the time on the ground. These happy people who have not been photographed since June, when they entered into a simulated environment, which includes a locked steel capsule in which they've already spent 233 days in, have not been seen since they went in. They're on a 520-day mock flight to Mars, according to the mission director. They're all feeling strong. They're ready to quote-unquote land on Mars sometime soon. The crew is all male, 3 Russians, a Chinese, a Frenchman, and an Italian. They've been inside windowless capsules at a Moscow research center since June. The mission aims to help real space crews in the future cope with confinement. The researchers communicate with the outside world, the researchers are the astronauts, via emails and video messages. The messages are even delayed to give them the feeling of being farther away out in space than just a few feet away from mission control. The crew members locked up in these tins, these metal vessels, eat canned food similar to that eaten on the International Space Station and can shower only once a week. Amazingly, though, none of them have considered abandoning the mission, although they're free to walk out at any time. The former cosmonaut who's in charge of the mission, Boris Morikov, said this morning they're still motivated, but there's a certain fatigue which is natural. The 6 men are due to land on Mars on February 12th, and they're going to spend 2 days researching the planet. Then they're going to begin the 233-day trip back. It's going to be very tough on them, according to the mission director. They've reproduced the conditions of space travel with the exception of weightlessness. They've also built in a separate built-in imitator the size of a bus from Mars's surface. That's attached to the current capsule for them to go out and simulate the mock landing. We'll keep our eyes on this. We sort of have a bet that somebody's going to walk out at some point. We'll monitor this. Stock market in New York is up about 51 points now. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and see you. If not, have a good weekend, and we'll be speaking with Tom Bolt on Monday. Thank you for watching.